All right, well, it's 9 o'clock, so I'm gonna hit record and get this show on the road. So glad to see you guys able to join us this morning. I'm gonna turn this off because that was just my welcome screen. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Danielle Peterson. I'm an adult education specialist at the Board of Education and was kind of the coordinator of putting this gathering together this morning. So a couple of just quick housekeeping items. If you're not familiar with Teams, it is pretty intuitive and similar to using Zoom or Google Meet. You've got your tools up along the top. Everyone does have access to their camera and their microphone. And I know that throughout the presentation, some of the presenters are going to have moments where they really would love for you to have those on so that you can interact and participate. But if there's a point where you're not speaking, just encourage you to keep those off because it helps us avoid distractions. We also do have a chat function, as a couple of people have started to put over there. Up along your toolbar, there's a little kind of chat bubble that you can use to open and close that, and I'll be facilitating that throughout the day too. So if you have questions that you want to communicate to the presenters, I'm happy to do that for you. I am recording, just started the recording, and we will be posting this meeting into our YouTube channel after the event so that you can go back to it. I know we're working around people's teaching schedules, and we do have some people that'll be coming in late or leaving early to make sure you had access to the full meeting. So I'm going to drop the link to our YouTube channel in the chat box. I would encourage you, if you haven't been there, to browse. We do have a lot of previously recorded meetings and webinars available there. It's a great resource. And if you subscribe to that channel, you'll get notifications as we add new content. One other announcement, just because this is the ESL group, I recently created a BEST recalibration Canvas course. So if you're a program that uses the BEST Plus 2.0 for your ESL assessment, you know that that's an oral assessment that comes with a level of subjectivity. And so we do ask that our test administrators recalibrate at least every 2 years. And so by moving that into a Canvas course, hopefully we've made that more convenient for you to be able to do that recalibration. And if you have any questions about how to access that, you can just reach out to me directly and I'll get you added into that course. So that was all of my kind of housekeeping stuff. With that, just want to share the agenda for today. Our theme for the year in adult education has been Make It Personal. So we're going to start with my colleague, Stephanie Patton, who's going to introduce that theme, kind of talk about why we chose it and why it's so important. After that, we're going to hear from some of our local experts. So Doris Sperry and Jamie Matthews and Davis Adult Education are going to be presenting and sharing some of their experience and expertise. That'll take us probably around 10:15, 10:30. We'll take a quick break. And after that, we'll come back, and Jen Christensen, who many of you know from her work at the Humanitarian Center, will be finishing off the rest of the morning for us. So I think we've got some great content. I'm excited to have you guys here. So with that, Steph, you're up.
Good morning. It's a crisp, cool morning here. I'm down in Manti this morning, so not in my normal spot. I don't have the spaceship that everybody says. Anyway, let me see if I can share my screen really quick. It's going to look weird for a second, so bear with me. Can you see that?
Yep, we're good.
Okay. All right, so like Danielle said, this year's theme is Make It Personal. And so I'm going to start out just by talking about kind of where we are as a state. And if you attended director's meeting in the fall, I apologize. This will be a review for you. So if we look at the need in this state, and this, I looked at a whole bunch of data all summer long. I just looked at data. And you can see this is from the American Community Survey, sorry, that we looked at from 2010 to 2018. And so the blue is the no diploma student or individuals in the state of Utah over the age of 25 who don't have a high school diploma. And the orange bar are those, again, same population, 25 years of age or older, who speak English less than very well. So we looked at these numbers, and you can see that they have been decreasing a little bit, but not hugely. So maybe from like about 9% down to just below 8% for diplomas in 2018, which is the most current data I was able to get. And then kind of similarly for the percentage of individuals in Utah who speak English less than very well. And the actual number has decreased because the population, has increased. So the population has increased and the actual number has increased slightly, but because the population has increased, the percentage has decreased, if that makes sense. So that's the need. There is still a significant need. And in fact, if you look at the numbers from 2018, and I can't remember exactly, but there's about 133,000 students who speak English less than very well, and about 144,000 who are in need of a high school diploma. So there's still a significant need out there for adult education. Now, if you look at the total number enrolled, again, looking from 2008 to 2019, that has significantly declined as the economy has gone up. So, almost well over 25,000 at our height when the economy was in decline, to 2019, where we were at about 14,000 something. And when I made this, we didn't have firm numbers yet for 2020, but 2020 we were right about 12,000, and we know COVID impacted that, of course. Because we missed all of the enrollment that would have happened at the end of the year when students are leaving K-12, but a significant decline. And that trend has continued this year as well, where we're about half of what we would normally, maybe 55, I haven't done the math, but about 55% of what we were last year at this time. So, still a lot of work to be done, I guess. And this is just looking at the demographic to see who our individuals are that we should be targeting for those without a high school diploma. So you can see that actually the majority of those without a high school diploma are in the age group of 45 to 64, which maybe is not what we typically expect. But then the second largest group is the 18 to 24. So kind of on each ends of the spectrum, right? The older ones and the younger, and lower percentages in that middle group. So just to kind of give you a broad overview of where we're at as a state. Now I want to make it personal a little bit. So I want you to picture in your head individuals who are close to you, and that can be nieces, nephews, children, grandchildren, friends. Who just think of some students or some people who are close to you. So I'm going to show you. These are my 5 children, and this is from a great experience we had down in Canaraville this summer. But so pretend when you're picturing the people who are close to you, pretend that they had walked into an adult education program. So if these were my 5 children and they walked into any of the programs across the state, what we know, and this is on average, right? So individual programs might be higher or lower. What we know is that before 12 hours, 2 of my children would not be being served. We would have lost them. So 37.6% of students leave the program before 12 hours. So we only have 3 of my children left. And I think, that's heartbreaking, because as a mother, that's 2 of my children, right? And I want all my children to succeed. But we do lose those really quickly. Then again, on average, before 40 hours, we lose another one. So that only 2 of my children would be receiving services for more than 40 hours. And so that's pretty significant. And I didn't know how to do this picture very well, but this really represents 1.5. You can see my son is really small up there in the corner. So we actually only post-test 1.5 of my children if we're looking at 5. And this is an average over many years, across the state. This has been the trend for many years, and it's been actually one of the troubling trends for me personally, because it's difficult. If we are not retaining those students, it's difficult to provide any kind of meaningful opportunities to them in less than 12 hours. And so what we wanted to do was look at some ways that we could make our services more personalized.
Hey,
and
Steph,
yeah.
we lost your slideshow.
Oh, well, that's really weird.
Yeah.
Let me stop sharing and let me try again. Sorry. Where did you lose it?
Just a minute or so ago.
When you were talking about your son, that's when it went off.
Oh, where he was just really, okay, so you didn't, I don't need to go backwards necessarily.
Yeah, I think if you try to reshare, I think what happened was Teams started spotlighting you, so we were seeing your slideshow, but also you, but then it was highlighting your video feed. So I turned off the spotlighting, so let's see if that works.
Also, I can just turn off my video too. I don't mind if you don't see me.
but the slideshow is back up. So,
okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. So again, trying to find ways to serve our students in a better way that will help retain them. That's really the goal of making it personal, right? Is to influence those numbers where more individuals are staying with our program for longer and receiving more significant services that can help them really change their lives in meaningful ways, right? I think under WIOA, and just as educators, our goal is really to help them impact long-term their lives in a positive way and find satisfying careers that take care of their families. So 3 things that we want to focus on this year, again, surrounding that make it personal. Oh, my computer's being weird. So the first one is increasing personal contact. So finding ways to really enhance that teacher-student relationship. There are a lot of studies that show that one of the really significant ways to increase motivation and make instruction more effective is through a personal teacher-student meaningful relationship, right? So one of the ways is just to start that the very first moment when they walk through that door, by creating an individualized plan. And you notice that there's an underlined there because programs may already be doing this and be calling it several different things. And so it doesn't matter what it's called, really. It's just about making sure that you're connecting with that student and creating a plan that's personalized for that student. And again, starting that from the moment that they walk in. If we have time, I would love for you guys to, any of you who feel that you're doing this really well, to just take a second and maybe share what you are doing well with creating an individualized plan of some sort. And I can't see like any raised hands or anything. So if you have, just unmute yourself and feel free to share if you can.
I like to work with my students one-on-one and find out what their goals are and how to best help them accomplish their goals, and maybe give them, if I can, extra support, extra resources to help them with their goals, so that they can feel that not only are they learning English, but they're accomplishing something that they personally have set their mind to do.
I love it. That's exactly what we want to do too, right? To have that conversation with them, to identify what their plan is, what their goal is for coming to us, and then focusing their instruction around it. That's great. Thank you. Any other ones who would like to share? Okay, I won't leave an awkward silence for too long, but I do know that a lot of programs are already doing well with this. But if there are ways to just make slight increases or improvements in that process, maybe look for 1% better. Another way to help increase personal contact is to put processes in place, to monitor student attendance and progress, and to do that regularly. And there are lots of different ways to do that as well. And another way that lots of programs have used are to utilize contact apps to make that easier for the program to make regular contact with students. So maybe like Remind or other GroupMe, any of those types of contact apps. But ultimately, the goal here is to increase the teacher-student relationships and thereby motivating the student to stay with us. The second one that we want to focus on is increasing personal feedback. So when I say feedback, this is really information about how we're doing in our efforts to reach our goal. And there are different types of feedback. So feedback surrounding the task. And this is when we're thinking about I do, we do, you do, this is really more about the specifics of what they're doing and more about surrounding the I do. The process is the we do, right? Showing them the process of the task at hand and helping make sure that the student knows not just the specifics of what needs to be done, but how to do it. And then you're aiming to get to the point where students, you're providing feedback about self-regulation, but it's, a scaffolding process, right? You're starting with a task and going to the process. And then when it's appropriate, moving on to the self-regulation and helping them to regulate their attention and their own efforts in a correct way. And so this is more of the you do. So feedback should also be surrounding where am I going, how am I going, and where do I go next, so that the student really understands the whole entire pathway. We're here, we're trying to get to this other place, and to get there, this is what I need to do. So that is very clear. And there is this link at the bottom that I think is a really great short article, so very accessible, on 7 keys to effective feedback. So the question is feedback really that important? Can it make a difference? Whoops. And the answer is, I'm telling you, I don't know why my computer's being weird, but the answer is yes, it does make a difference. So from John Hattie, we know that feedback has a 0.75 effect size. And if you're familiar with John Hattie's work at all, 0.75 is significant. And one of the higher instructional methods, to make a difference. It's one of the greater effect sizes. But when you're giving feedback, it can't just be giving more. It needs to be goal referenced, tangible and transparent, actionable, specific and personalized, timely, ongoing, and consistent. And when your feedback is really targeted and specific, that really helps the student to make those corrections and to do better next time, and helps keep them motivated and engaged because they know what they're doing and they know where they're going and how to get there. And so again, our second goal is to increase personal feedback. And then the last one is to set personalized expectations. And so this, during intake, it kind of goes back to that personalized or increasing personal contact and building that relationship. But during intake, help the student to create a personalized goal. And to make that first experience with this student, maybe taking a little bit more time and really making it personalized. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. You can identify strengths and weaknesses through their transcripts, through the assessment that we're required to give them anyway, and really helping the student to understand where they are and what's possible and where they need to go. And I really like the idea of doing a SWOT analysis with the students, so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and helping them work through, not telling them all the answers, but helping them work through what their strengths and their weaknesses are, and looking for the opportunities in that, and identifying the threats and finding ways to overcome those obstacles. And I do have a little template, I guess, for that. Some questions that you could work through within that. If you're interested in that, feel free to email me and I'll send that template to you. So again, I've been doing lots of reading during the summer and lots of data analysis, and I had already looked at these 3 areas. And then I was reading Fullen's book, The New Meaning of Educational Change, and he talked about the centered student and how the centered student was more activated, more engaged, more motivated, and because of the motivation, right, had greater persistence. And he said that the centered student really has these 3 areas: my learning, my belonging, and my aspirations, which really align with the 3 goals that I just outlined. And so I was excited that maybe I wasn't so far off track, right? So the my learning, you know, is focusing on learning to learn and giving the student feedback and allowing the student to have student agency. My belonging is really about building that relationship and having caring. And so that, you know, goes back to that increasing personal contact. And my aspirations is about helping them to identify their expectations, where they want to go, and their needs and interests. And so that goes back to that setting personalized expectations. So I really encourage you throughout the year to really focus on how you can make your services more personal for your students by increasing personal contact, increasing student feedback, and setting personalized expectations for the students. And we're here to support you. So if you ever need anything from us, don't hesitate to reach out, because we want to be part of this program, you know, this journey for you and your students. So let us know how we can help. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Steph. We are doing okay on time, so does anybody have any questions or comments that you want to share with Steph before we move on? Diana, is that a raised hand? Because you can just unmute yourself.
Sorry, that was from earlier.
Okay.
I'll unraise my hand.
No problem. And then Kelsey, you've also got a raised hand. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just wanted to comment on how I've been really thrilled with the new Burlington Core program and how it has incorporated those goal projects into its lessons. So that's something that I kind of do with my students on the first few days of class, is usually go over their like short-term goals or their long-term goals and establish those and have them like written down in their workbooks where they can kind of refer to them. And then we can also check in periodically and see if they're meeting them or not.
And there are lots of tools like that that help make this a lot easier for us, right? Thanks for spotlighting that.
And there's a question, what was the name of the program again? That was Burlington English Core, right, Kelsey?
Yes, yeah, the core program, which was new.
Awesome. Well, any other thoughts before we move on? All right, well, I would like to thank Stephanie this morning. And as you can see, a really important theme. Retention is such a challenge. And I think if we can take the time to really get to know our students and individualize things for them just a little bit, it goes a long way in showing them that we care about them and helping them to be individually successful. So moving on, we're going to go to Doris and Jamie if you guys are ready.
Yes, I'm going to try sharing my screen. I'm a little nervous. So let's see. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
All right, it says it's shared. Let me unshare. Bring this up. Oh, okay. How about now?
Now we can see it.
All right, yay. That's half the battle.
We love it when technology cooperates.
Yes. And thank you for the you can do it message. Are you seeing my slideshow or my preview?
We can see the slideshow.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay, so let me go back. So this is making it personal at Chal. I want my caveat is every program has things to share. And we really feel it's important as a program to do that on a regular basis. And we'd love to see from other programs as well, because we always learn something when we look at what other programs are doing. We always know we need to improve, but we'd like to share the things that we're doing well and some of the things that we are trying to do well and some of the things we know we need to improve on. So that's just sort of my caveat as Jamie and I get going on this. So I think it's important for to point out what our overarching reason for making it personal and for why we do our job at Canyon Heights is to facilitate restoring, building and or rebuilding, enhancing, extending the student's sense of self and self-value. That is our number one mission, is doing that, is to make sure that people have a sense of their self and their self-value. And so that is in everything we do, from academic to data collection, whatever we're doing, that is always at the back of our minds and involved in whatever we're doing. So we also do that in a number of ways, but a couple of ways, since the theme is making it personal, is through social emotional learning and building relationships, like we talked, which is what Stephanie kind of talked about. Social emotional learning, we know that people learn best if they're emotionally healthy and they have a strong connections with their classmates. And if they have strong relationships in the community of our classrooms and school, and also with the teachers as part of that community. One thing I've learned, this month is my 27th, the ending of my 27th year doing this. And one thing that I've learned over the years is that immigrating is not for wimps. It is a very difficult process. And one thing I've learned is that it often brings a loss of self. So when we're in our familiar environment, and people find this even when they move to a new community or a new house within the same country, you have a tendency to lose those parts that you are identifying with, that show you your identity. And when people leave all of those parameters, they bring some of them with them in their own selves, but often they're having to create from scratch new ones. but I have seen people who are very, very confident in their home language or their home country, and they come here and they don't know who they are anymore. It happens to a lot of people. I would say a majority, not everyone, especially if people are here forever and they're not going to ever go back home and live. They lose the sense of who they are, and that has to rebuild. And if they're coming to us, then we can be a place where that begins, and we can facilitate that process. So our programs, all of our programs, can provide rebuild, restore, enhance, and grow a sense of self. So again, that we try to be aware of that as we're dealing with students as they come in, and help them to feel reflect back to them as much as we can their value, and help them to rebuild their sense of self or enhance it or grow it. These are some of the areas Jamie came up with these really good organizational areas to kind of put it together. So before class, before they even begin a class, or before class starts on a daily basis, is one category. In class, what happens when they're in the classroom with us, spending that time with them. And right now that's a little difficult with COVID, because we've got a blend of in-person, and maybe some people are not able to do in-person, so online. But what do we do in the class? And then outside of class, that's outside of class on a daily basis, or as they move on to the next step. So if we start with intake, that's before they've even started a class. How do we build that or enhance that sense of self and relationship building and intake? So most of you know that deciding to take a class as an adult can be really, really intimidating and scary. Students are often very, very nervous. Some people have been away from education for a while and don't feel comfortable in a class. So those things take place, and it's just kind of difficult. So in our program, it is the teachers that do the intake. Some programs, that's not the case. Maybe the first time you meet the student is after intake. But I'm just going to share this because I know maybe about half of us do everything, including intake. So when they come to us, we have it set up in as organized a fashion as we can, but we understand that this is a time of first impressions. It's a time to meet and greet. And so we try to make it a warm, calm, safe beginning. And underlying everything is it's a time to offer service. Service in filling out the demographic form, service in facilitating being able to sit down and find a comfortable spot to do the demographic form, service as we take them from the demographic and the screening to a testing environment, service as we help them with their schedule. And as we have that attitude of service, we try, sometimes it can be wild, but we try to focus on the student we're working with at the time. We may have a line, it may be busy, but when we're with that student, that's the only person that exists at that moment, and that helps to bring a sense of safety and warmth. And then we do the SEOP process. Do you want to talk about that, Jamie, a little bit? Just show what we do with that. Jamie's come up with some a good plan, and
You want to get the next slide.
Okay. I think just go over these first four bullets, and then.
So after they have filled out their registration forms, we go and talk to them and do our oral screening. And then we make sure that they have filled out their SEOP and talk to them about the reasons why they want to study English, and then find out about their background. And it helps us to also know what classes will be better for them and what classes we can put them into the future. And then we also talk about their future study plans. So sometimes students come, but do they have the time? How to make the time with their schedule. So on there we say, when do you work? How many hours do you work? And go through how many hours can you study? How much time can you invest? And we try to help them to create those SMART goals during that SEOP to be able to plan those things. And then we can also see for their future what they want to do. And sometimes they don't know because they haven't gotten past that short-term thinking to be able to say, oh, I can do this. So we are able to help them to develop new plans to say, you are capable, you can do this. And this is an example of the form that we have so that we can just reference back to it and we can add to it later. This is something, adding later is something that we still need to continue to work on. It just takes time. And so each time we have a focus, and our focus is to get this form completed for them and to help them to know what their goals are.
Just to interject on that short-term thinking, some people are in such a sense of survival and learning English and being told in so many ways every day what they cannot do at the grocery store, talking with the child's teacher, just navigating life over and over. They are told what they cannot do, even if that is just seeing someone's blank stare as they don't understand what they're saying. We want to turn it around and tell them what they can do. And sometimes we have to begin the dreaming for them. So we like to have them think about what they're going to do next, even though that's sometimes a hard step. And we may make suggestions based on what they've already done. And as we get into the class, that can happen more. So maybe starting the dream for them and getting them into a belief in what they can do. So that's before they even have a class. Once they have a class, a lot of times we have before class starts or in between classes. And what are we doing to make the environment where they come a welcoming place that reflects their value, reflects who they are, and who they can continue to be. So we have a few things we do. This is old because of COVID. We can't get together and take pictures. So we are enjoying last year's pictures here. But one of the things that we do to create a welcoming atmosphere is we have class pictures in the common area. We greet by them whenever we see them, even if it's been several times a day, especially by their name. And we like to do a little chit chat when we can in a very informal atmosphere. How's it going with your new job? You know, how's your family? And we might even share something about our families too, to build that relationship. We've got a flag for every country. And we've got quite a few flags because we've had, more than 50 countries over the years. And that people can really love their new country, but generally the country of your birth or where you grew up is going to always be in your heart. So seeing that reflects back that that's important. We have a world map and inspiring quotes all around our facility. It's wonderful to see how many times people will congregate at this map and show people where their country is and talk about that. And it's nice and big, as you can see from our students there, that it's really a good talking point, but it reminds people of who they are, gives them an opportunity to share that as well. Then we have in class, and we just threw out here a brainstorm of things we do in class to make it personal. You could kind of glance at that. We'll pull some of these out. And I'm sure that you'll see a lot of familiar things that you also do in your programs. So one of the things that we have considered really important is class size. Right now, that isn't something we've had to restrict at all. Well, a little bit. We did in the beginning have a strict number of students that could be in the class because of COVID. But in general, our philosophy is that we do limit class size. We will not allow, huge numbers to come in. We found that's counterproductive. And maybe as teachers, you don't really have control over that, but you do have control over speaking to your administrators and letting them know when that is not valuable. So here's just some of those benefits of limiting the class size. We do try to get people in as much as soon as we can, but not if it's going to interfere with the learning that's already taking place. We do have waiting lists from time to time. We offer other solutions, some tutoring and so forth, but we also do managed enrollment. So students come in at a logical point. And those are, you can look at those. When we do have absolutely excellent retention, that doesn't mean we don't ever lose students, but retention is really, really good. And we do think that this is one of them. And this also is how you make it personal. I think that's kind of speaks for itself. You have anything to add, Jamie?
No, I think even this time where it has been even smaller, where we have 9 to 12 in a class and sometimes only 3 in a class, and then by the end 2 had to leave early, and I had a student, there was just 1, and she's like, do I have to leave? And I said, no, you are just as valuable and I will teach you. And so it doesn't matter, even if you just have the 1, that class size up to 27 is our maximum when it's not COVID. But it is important that they feel like they're not just a number, and that they are counted in the class as an individual.
So I actually put quite a bit on this. Names are super important because they are such an integral part of our identity. And I don't think that that's news to anybody here. Probably just a reminder, or you may be doing this fabulously well, but it is so important to what we do. So this is what I try to do. I make a commitment to learn every name and memorize it the first day. That means sometimes I have to lie in my bed at night and go through each person's face and say their name over and over in my head. One of the things that I like to do is ask, if we're not sure how to say it, well, how does your mother say it? Because they will, and then if we can approximate that, then we do. If it really sounds bad and we're slaughtering it, then we'll call them whatever else they'd like to be called, rather than saying their name incorrectly time after time. But what does your mother call you? Do you want to be called that here too? And also taking into consideration what they prefer to be called as opposed to what's in Utopia. And then always welcoming them with their names. And I try to make a commitment that when a student walks in the room, that is a moment that I need to stop whatever I'm doing and greet them. Even students who come in late, I don't let that interrupt hugely, but I do act very welcoming and say their name. And then we highlight I make a commitment, and I know my other teachers do, to highlight learning with their names. So if a student answers a question, makes a comment about whatever we're learning, even if it's the third person singular, if I am reviewing, I might say, and just like Maria said, we need to add S to the verb here. They have made a contribution to speak about it again using their name, bringing them back in and confirming the way that they contribute to the classroom. We also publish their names through, one of them is irregular verb tests or reading books, and we'll put names up as people accomplish those so that they can see their name. And it's just really important. We also have activities. These are some that I've done. We've had a lesson or a check-in where we talked about how they got their names. We talk about what their names mean. And we actually did an online class when it's really hard sometimes to connect. We started with a poem. They wrote their own poem about what their name means. We will have a quiz tomorrow about the names in the class. So everybody has to learn each other's names. And that can be, I try to make it fun. And I tell them I'm pretty old, and if I can remember all your names, then you can remember each other's names as well. I just wanted to share quickly what my name means poem written by a woman about my age from Brazil. She said, this is based on a Scholastic Scope activity. We love Scholastic Scope for our upper level students. My husband thinks my name means beautiful and fragrant woman. My daughter thinks my name means a plate of fresh and delicious food. My granddaughter thinks my name means cozy lap that consoles and soothes. My best friend thinks my name means delectable desserts for our meetings. My Pilates instructor thinks my name means who doesn't understand her command. My hairstylist thinks my name means who has a lot of hair and loves to cut it, like me. My neighbors think my name means who doesn't speak English. My English teacher thinks my name means who can do it. I think there's some stuff they left out, like dreams and goals, like buy a house and travel to Europe, and lies awake at night, sometimes worrying about the mom who lives far away, and having doubts about aging healthily and how not to depend on others, and loves nothing more than being with family and friends, enjoying good food in a natural landscape. So this is obviously a higher level student, but it takes a few drafts and some work. And I also shared what I thought my name meant, and we worked together on this. And then the ultimate is to publish it, so everybody knows what everybody thinks their name means, and we learn a lot about each other in that. That's a step with this online class that I didn't actually do, so shame on me. That should have been better. And what if you have the same name? So this is one of my favorite pictures. It was a brilliant idea from former teacher Aaron Clark. Is we had a group of young men who all had the same name, and she decided to highlight them. And not only did they all have the same name, they all spelled their names differently. So we put this up on our Facebook page, Humans of Canyon Heights. And what is my name? Mohammed, 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 and Mohammed. It's a lovely way to highlight that. Did you have anything to add, Jamie?
No, not on that part.
Okay. Another thing we do, and I'm going to let Jamie kind of, I'm going to just briefly explain it and then let Jamie talk about this one. This is a check-in that we do every day, at least in the morning class. Jamie, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so I do it in all of my classes that as a transition. And just to know that it's not just grammar or writing. We want to know you. And so we ask them questions. How was your weekend? What's your favorite color or why? Sometimes we'll just do a quick survey and see how many people like the snow. It just snowed last week. And how did you feel about that? Or what do you prefer, the beach or the mountains? When you connect it to, also help them to connect to the future. So what are you going to do this next weekend? Another way to check in is with the high lows. And we ask at the end of class, what was a high or what was a low? And I think it just helps students to be able to find their place. Doris sometimes has her meditations be as a check-in. Okay, let's check in, let's refocus, let's do our breathing. And I know when her class hasn't done it and they come to my class, it makes a big difference in their day. We were very privileged to be able to do a lot of professional development to learn about from Hotep and his Hustle University, to learn a lot about the importance of these check-ins. And just sometimes it's just checking in with a teacher to make sure, are you okay? And then it can rebound onto, if the teacher's not okay, then it can affect the lesson. And so by checking in, it also makes it personal, because you as a teacher can share, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but you can share your own opinions and they can see that after they've all done theirs. And so that they get to know you in a personal way too.
It really does add a dimension to the community spirit of the class as we get to know people, and brings out those people that they're a little afraid to speak. It really has added to our community. I wanted to also just take a minute for Jamie and I to share a little bit about tell your story. Now, of course, as professionals, when we mean tell your story, the first thought in our mind is always about the student. It's about them, not about us. If we're making it about us, then we tend to share inappropriately or talk too much about ourselves in ways that doesn't add to the community of the class. But if we are just all business and we don't take a minute to share our story where it's appropriate, then how do we expect them to be able to feel safe sharing their story? And I have felt throughout my years of teaching that some of the best community building, relationship building moments have been when I have opened up and shared a part of my story, the good, the bad, the difficult, my failures, my successes, funny stories. Just quickly telling one, and I had a student mention this to me. He said, "Oh, teacher, last week you told this story and I laughed. I've been laughing about it every night." The story, very quickly, my little brother was about 5 years old, and he wanted to go. He went to the eye doctor, and the eye doctor finished the examination, and he said, "Okay, David, is there anything that you would like to ask me?" And he said, "You know, doctor, you really need to fix my eyes, because I really can't see. When my mother sends me down in the basement to get something, I can't see it." And the doctor just laughed and said, "I have the same problem with my wife. I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to solve your problem." But just that little sharing of that story with him kept him laughing for a week, and he remembered it. So sharing family legends, a lot of these having to do with topics, it just opens up to show how real you are. Did you have something to share there, Jamie?
Yeah, so there's, like I mentioned with the check-ins, my students now will also do the check-in with me. And a couple of weeks ago, I had some sad news, or it was about a month. And so they saw me, and so they said, "What happened?" And I was able to share an experience, which then led to another student opening up and being able to share her experience of losing her daughter, and how the community, the class, was able just to bond with her, even though that was 5 years ago, that, and none of them knew that she had another daughter. But she was able to talk to them, and then it got into the conversation of, you know, that she has shared with speeding and different things, to be careful with driving, and her concern about people coming to school and stuff like that. And then we could talk about other things that related to relating it to the grammar, or relating it to the class lesson, because it happened in my class, and then it impacted Doris's class too, and she was able to share that video. But if I hadn't opened up, then she wouldn't have been able to share her own story. And when people are showing that they are vulnerable, or that they make mistakes, when the teacher shows that, then the students are more willing to say, oh, it's okay. It's okay to let my guard down in here, because it's a safe place.
And just to pick up from that about making mistakes, of course, teachers make mistakes too. And one of the things I've instituted into my class is, if the students can catch me making a mistake, then I have a chocolate and they get it. So it almost becomes a contest to see if the teacher makes a mistake. And if I am, very humble about that and willing to accept my mistake, then they feel better about making the mistakes they have to make over and over and over in class. Part of making it personal has to do with what we offer in giving them confidence. And so we really think it's vital to have a really strong rigor and intensity in whatever program that we have. And we try to have high expectations of excellence and skill building. And when building skills builds confidence and a sense of self-worth. Social emotional learning without strong skill building is incomplete learning. If you make friends, that's great. But you can make friends other places too. So it has to be accompanied by skills they can take out in the world and make the community their world. And teachers help students see ultimate possibilities and facilitate their progress. And that's something that's part of that rigor and intensity. And if we don't have rigor, if we don't have enough time with the student, then we are not helping them to succeed. Some of the skills we think are essential right now, and we've been trying to do this for a while now, is building digital literacy. We do it in these ways. We do have a very inexpensive keyboarding program, and we do keyboarding. We are blessed, not every program does this, but we are very blessed and fortunate to have a computer for each student. So that is a barrier that programs like ours and ones that are maybe in inner city Salt Lake can start working on overcoming those barriers of technology, which really is a big wall to success. And that may take some real creative work to do, but we find that really important. We know that writing is difficult, and it's difficult to teach, and it's difficult to do, but we believe that it is a very important part, even at our lowest levels. And we try to show them success even at those lower levels. Just the basics: reading, and of course, functional reading for civics, practical reading, but academic as well. We are a program that has a transition program. We send our students to further training, and so that's really important. If they cannot express themselves, and a lot of times that's the thing that brings a student into your class, is I just can't speak. People don't know what I'm saying. I can read and I can write, and I can understand, but I can't speak. So we try to integrate that into every lesson, and help them to learn from the stress patterns. We particularly use clear speech, which is a life changer for people. It's the best pronunciation resource, in my opinion, in the world and in the business. And we help them to, we do correction, and we try to do that in a way that doesn't shut students down. So those are some of the important things, of course, listening to. Jamie, you want to take it to this next part?
Yeah, so this is something that has really opened up a lot of people's minds, and sometimes it can be painful, but we talk about it and I share my own experiences so that they can get their story out. We write a life history. So each class, I have a journal and they have 15 minutes to write the topic. So I say, tell me about this, or what's your favorite, what if, or your opinion. And so once they have written for those 15 minutes, then we get in groups. Right now with COVID, it is a whole class discussion. But when I have up to 27 in a group, then I would have it broken down to 4 or 5 students, and they share their journal. So some of them might not be able to write everything down, but they are really good at speaking. And so then at that share time, they can share even more than what they wrote. And it just opens up, and then each student gets to hear. So one powerful experience that's happened this year, and I've done this life history, the questions, and specifically this question I've done, but this last time it really made an impact. They had to tell their opinion of winning and losing, and then a time that they have lost and made it, and how it made them feel. All the past years, they had talked about a game or a soccer game or an activity that they had done, or they lost their keys, or they lost their glasses. But this last time, every single student talked about their loss of self and their loss of their job or their loss of their country. And it helped them because I was able to say how powerful they are and that they are not stupid, and to show them their value. Sorry. But if I hadn't taken the time to have them share their journal, not just write it down just for me, it would have been a different experience. So writing it down and then sharing verbally, they could feel the emotion in the room. And I have seen that class bond better than it has. And they've been able to start creating more friendships because they say, oh, you're just like me. Or, I can help you with this because I'm good at this. And so it really helped them to gain their friends and to empower them to say, your story is important and you are more, even more than what you feel your loss is. And so it's just has been an amazing experience over all these years. And they take that life history with them in English to share with their families, to say, this is who I am. Where there's many people who don't see it because they put that blinder on and say, you speak a different language. I don't understand you. I don't want to get to know you. But if in this safe environment, if we let them have their voice, if we tell them their story, they feel comfortable, they want to keep coming. They come back to learn more and they keep coming. Some of our students stay for the full school year, and we have hundreds of hours. And it's because they feel like they are important in the class and that they can share their story and be who they are. So this next part, I really like to be active in the school, I up and down the stairs, up and down the stairs, or like a student said, when I'm running around in the class, always moving, because it helps me. It helps me to learn. And I know that I have other students that's their same way. So I need to look at the different activities and different things that I have. And this was an advanced grammar class that I was really struggling to try to get them to share, to open up, to get to know each other. And we were working on hobbies and the present perfect and what they have been able to accomplish. So I had them research different hobbies, and then we actually went out. And we went, and there's a geocache really close. So we went geocaching, and as we're talking, we're using the grammar, we're talking about directions, and they were so excited to be able to learn a new skill that was reinforcing the grammar that we are talking about, but also something that they can do to go find different places in Utah and to be able to do something with their family. The other thing was ultimate frisbee, and it was hilarious. I taught them the new game. We got out. We were working again on how movement happens and how you can do that with grammar, and how sometimes you're going to be moving progressively and then something stops, and then you'll say, well, what just happened? So you can relate it back. We came back into the class after doing these activities, and they were so rejuvenated, and they were talking to each other. They were interacting with each other. They were laughing, because sometimes you went after a frisbee and you slid on the grass, and then everyone's trying to comfort you. And so this taking it and making it real to them and doing things outside of the class, that you bringing them into the class, it can be really powerful. I had another activity where we've been reading about ice cream and a taste tester of ice cream and the best job. And so we brought in the supplies, and the students made ice cream for the first time. And some of them wanted to make more and take it home on their bus back to Job Corps, because they hadn't ever done this before. And to be able to make something like that and apply it to the grammar or the topic of jobs or those things makes a deeper connection with the students, and so that they'll remember those activities and get excited to come. What else is going to happen? What's the next thing that we could possibly be doing in the class?
Jamie could do a whole presentation on the many ways that she does that, and it in fact I recommend that happen at some time. Going further with relating it to me, we can do it in some of these really impactful ways, but we can do it in small ways that done consistently is impactful. So for example, I have a vocabulary list. We're trying to learn this vocabulary. At one of the UAC conferences, we had this statistic, so I couldn't tell you where it comes from, but it stuck with me. Students must experience a word an average of 8 times to instill it in their personal lexicon. That's an average. Some people like me, it might take 12 times. Maybe there are people it takes 4 times, but students cannot just see a word once or twice, and it's important there to experience. So one of the things that you could do just in learning vocabulary is then to turn it to relating to themselves. So here are a few words from our latest reading: aspire, grit, excel. Question: in what area or skill do you excel? Explain. What career do you aspire to have? Something, just bring it, relating it to them in a very simple way. We had a topic in Step Forward Level 3 about what's cooking, and we had students present lunch in their country. Take a little time, look up pictures, and share the answers to questions. What time is lunch? How long does lunch last? What is it the biggest meal of the day? What do you miss most about lunch? And show it. This one was Ethiopian lunch. We're getting short on time, so I'm going to go a little faster here. We try to put in a variety of teaching styles. How personal is it if we only teach one way and we have a classroom full of students? We try to offer a variety of ways to meet our students' needs and differentiate and change it up so that students can, whatever their learning style, access and learn, including online, which has been kind of a new adventure for us. Then we try to celebrate. We do this outside of the class too. We take it fairly formally and do it outside of class, but we do it within the class and celebrate the things that they have accomplished, and try to show enthusiasm, especially if we see students not really liking the idea. We try to tell them the benefits of it and show enthusiasm for whatever we're learning. And here are some of just areas where we recognize our students. One of our favorite awards called the Community Spirit Award. Sorry about that. And this is where we take each student and honor them for one way that they impact the community environment. So this one is for her devotion to goodness and for excelling in school and life. So just celebrating. And here is a picture of one of our awards nights. Outside of the class, just the few minutes that we have left, here's kind of a brainstorm again of things we try to do outside of the class on a daily, weekly basis, and outside of the class to help them transition. We do think that's very important, and we have a strong transition program, but we'll maybe talk about that another time. But here are keeping in touch strategies. And Stephanie mentioned some of those. We do rely heavily on remind.com, which allows us to text message without giving our own phone number. We use WhatsApp groups. We do regular interviews. We do comeback calls. We give out personal notes. If we see a student that maybe needs a pickup, then we just discreetly give them a little note for themselves, and that happens, numerous times during the year. We make friends on Facebook. As we're adults, we have a little more freedom in that, and that's one of the ways we keep in touch too. At UAC in 2014, I don't remember who the speaker was, the keynote what, but they showed that they showed the statistics for this paraphrased comment that has also stuck with me. If a student doesn't feel the connection within 7 days or 7 class periods of enrolling, they will quit. The biggest majority will leave. So that is super important that we do that, that we make that connection. I think we've iterated that. Jamie, do you just want to quickly cover this?
Because this is one of my goals. I have actually really loved this time that COVID happened, because after 19 years, I feel like I'm becoming a better teacher, especially in the area of feedback, because we didn't use Canvas before, and I would write things on there, or they would group correct, and then I didn't always see them. But with this feedback on Canvas, it can be so personal, and to tell them, this is what you're doing really well, and then this is, I think you can work harder on this, or this is the thing that you need to improve. And so to make it personalized and clear, and stating what they did well and what they can improve on, but just cheering them on. Sometimes it's like, thank you, because I did the work to make this assignment, so thank you for doing it. You did a great job. Or if I have students that have done well consistently, I can spotlight those students who have turned things in quickly. In when we come into class, I say, thank you for all of those that and I would say their names, that have turned this in. I really appreciate it. But I don't say, you didn't turn it in. But by saying, acknowledging those that did, then the others like, oh, wait a second. And so I think this feedback has been really good for me. From March and now, I have gotten better at this area because of working with Canvas and doing that specifically on there.
Also, we need to, as part of making it personal, is respecting the limits that individuals have. And you can scan here and see these are be very familiar to you, acknowledging limits, but also offering solutions. And these are some of the things we've done to offer solutions to those limits. But working within those parameters, trying to meet the needs of everyone who's willing to learn. Sometimes we have to just accept that the student's not ready right now and that they'll come back later. I always tell them, we are waiting for you. If now is not the time, we are waiting for when it is. I've had students stop and start 3 or 4 times and finally finish, as they know that they can come back, that they haven't burned their bridges. Being available. This has been a great thing with COVID. I'll get text messages at 9 p.m. I quickly can take care of it. I tell them, you contact me anytime. I will answer when I can. Some of my students are working, at midnight. So I see that at 6 o'clock in the morning and respond. But just keeping in touch and making it, seeing the whole student, not just the one that walks in the door, but the one that is making dinner every night for the family before she comes to work. For the man that has 4 jobs and is trying to provide Wi-Fi for his family, knowing the students as a whole student where possible really builds the success. We believe in making it personal. We believe that it creates the success that we're looking for which we get paid. That's not our first priority, but that is where it takes it. Now, we've had this program for 27 years and it's robust, it's successful, it is making a difference. We can improve, we can do better. But one of the things that encourages me is that I know it takes time and that it's a step-by-step process. And it does not matter what step I am on. If I just started my program, if I am a first-time teacher, it doesn't matter what step I am. It just matters that I'm taking steps. And that will matter that day for a student. And then it takes commitment. And in that commitment, it is important to recognize our own limits of time. And so I am comforted when I say I can start small. I start with one strategy. I am going to add one strategy per year and maintain the one I added last year. I am not going to try to have a huge program or an amazing class all at once. It comes with time, it comes with commitment, it comes with caring, and whatever you do in those steps, they make a difference, sometimes for generations. And they are worth the journey. So I will stop sharing now and turn back over to Danielle.
Well, I'm so glad we're recording today because I think everybody needs to hear that. And I think that you're going to have a lot of people wanting your slide deck and some of the resources. Just loved like the name poem and some of the activities and can really see the passion that you guys bring. I can just testify that having been in their program, you can feel that effort that they've made to create that sense of community. And I know this year has created so many challenges for us, but I love seeing the creativity, not just in Davis, but as I've talked to all of your programs, how much you care about your students and all of the different ways that you're trying to figure out how we can maintain contact and how we can keep them progressing through their goals. And I just appreciate all of you and the work that you do so much. So we're getting lots of thank yous and great ideas over in the chat box. If anybody has any questions that they want to ask of these guys, we do have a second. All right, we're pretty quiet, but if anybody has follow-up questions, I can connect you with them as well. So let's take a 10-minute break, stand and stretch, run and grab a snack, and we'll be back at 10:30. If you want to just stay in the room, you can just turn yourself on mute, and I'm going to put up a countdown clock. At 10:30, we're going to hear from Jen Christensen. All right. Thanks all. All right, it's 10:30, so hopefully everybody enjoyed their break for a second, but we're gonna get back to it. And our next presenter is Jen Christensen, who I think many of you know from her work at the Humanitarian Center over the last several years. So I'm gonna turn it over to Jen.
Thanks, Danielle. Can you guys hear me?
I can.
Great. So I have my video icon on, but I don't think my camera is on. So unfortunately, you can hear me, but you can't see me. Is that right? Okay. And can you see my slideshow? Danielle, can you let me know if you can see the slideshow there?
Oh, sorry, I had muted myself. Yes, we can see the slides.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm sorry I can't show you my face by camera. I have fiddled a little bit and I'm not quite sure what the issue is here. So we'll just go ahead. My name is Jen Christensen, and I know a few of you, but there are a lot of you that I don't know. I've been working in adult ed for the last 20-ish years here in Salt Lake, and almost all of that time I've been working with low-level learners and low beginners. So that is what Danielle has asked me to present on. So I'll be talking about some ideas for how to make things personal, especially when teaching beginning level English learners. Also wanted to say thanks and great job to Doris and Jamie. It's clear that you guys are really talented at making personal connections with your students. Thanks for all the good ideas. So I'm gonna stop sharing for a moment here so you guys can quickly in the chat tell me where you are teaching. Let's see how I stop sharing here. Yeah, so we are gonna do a bit of interaction. We're gonna do several interactive things here. So just as a test, will you guys all open your chat box and tell me where you're located, what school you're teaching at, or what city. Looks like we have 25 people in this meeting. If we could get most people to write a quick chat in there, that'd be great. And everybody can glance through the chat, see where people are. We've got people all over the state joining us. Hi, Jamie Adams. Great, we've got Ogden, Orem, Park City, Moab, Clearfield, a couple people here in Salt Lake. Price. Wonderful. Well, welcome to all of you. I also want, before I screen share again, I want to try to do a video activity. And this is where I'm especially sad that I can't get my camera on. So this is the only very short time that I'm going to have you guys participate by video. And I realize that maybe not everybody will be comfortable doing that, but anybody who's comfortable turning your video on for a moment, we're going to do a quick video activity. Great. So we've got a handful of people on video here. Hello. Wonderful. So I'm going to ask 4 different questions, and I want you to hold up your fingers to show me the answer. So this is a show me activity. So the first question is, how long have you been teaching English learners? So you're going to show me your 5 fingers. Sorry, I can't be on video to show you. So if you feel like you're pretty new to this profession, show me maybe just 1 finger. If you think you have a little bit of experience, you could show me 2 or 3. If you feel like you have quite a bit of experience behind you that you've accumulated, you can show me all 5 fingers. So show us where you think you fit. So we've got some newer, more experienced people. Okay, everybody's showing me between 1 and 5 fingers. So if you're on the video, show me your fingers here. Great. Okay, thank you. So our next question is, what level are the students that you teach? If you would say that you're mostly working with beginners, show me just 1 finger. If you mostly work with advanced learners, show me 5 fingers. If you're mostly working with an intermediate, you could show me 2 or 3 fingers. If you have a mixed group, you can wiggle your fingers all around. So show us. Oh yeah, lots of wiggling fingers. I love it. Great. Okay. One more question. Right now, are you teaching in person or virtually? So if you're teaching virtually, show me a V with your fingers. If you're teaching in person, I wish I could show you what I'd come up with here, but I'm making a P with my 2 hands. Okay, so show me a V or yeah, perfect. That's a great P. In person is a P, V is virtual. Fantastic. All right, thank you. Okay, and then one last question. I know not everybody's here along the Wasatch Front, but here in Salt Lake, we've received a lot of cold weather and snow this week. Tell me, how excited are you about this cold weather and snow? 1 is not excited. 3 is okay, and 5 is it's winter and I like winter. Yeah, okay. Some zeros. Nobody's a 5. Yeah, not surprised. All right, okay. So I'm gonna go back to screen sharing here. Let's see. Okay, so there are 3 areas that I'll be talking about in the next little bit. So some ideas for making it personal. Number 1, know your learners. Number 2, use relevant content. And number 3, track progress. So I'm giving you a little mini challenge right here. Can you memorize these 3 phrases? So stare at this for about 10 seconds. Can you memorize these 3 phrases? Know your learners, use relevant content, and track progress. If you think you have it memorized, this is your test. What are the missing words here? And I know not everybody's on audio, so just check yourself. I'll say them out loud and see if you remember them. So number 1 is know your learners. Number 2 is use relevant content. And number 3 is track progress. So these are the 3 areas we're going to be talking about today. Starting with know your learners. And specifically, we're talking about know your beginning learners. And within this topic, we'll talk about beginners have a wide range of needs. I'll share a 5-minute literacy screening tool, and then we're going to have a discussion about mixed ability groups. And this 3rd point is where I want you guys to chip in with all of your experience. So let's start by talking about different types of beginners. There are lots of different ways to think about beginners, but this is one way. So if you think about beginners on a spectrum of low or 0 speaking and listening up to a high beginner speaking and listening. Can you see, by the way, when my cursor moves around? Can somebody get on audio and tell me if you can see my cursor moving around?
Yes.
So I can point at things and you'll know what I'm pointing at. Great, thanks. So one spectrum is 0 to high beginning when we're in speaking and listening. And then the other would be literacy experience in any language. This on this end would be somebody who's never been to a formal education, has never received formal schooling in their native language. And up here would be someone who is maybe a high school graduate or even a college graduate or professional in their native language. So in this corner, we have those who have a low English speaking ability and also low literacy. In this corner, we've got those who may speak at a high beginning level, but don't have that background literacy. Over here would be someone who may be very educated in their native language, but they're at a very low level of English. And up here we've got the high beginners who are also have high literacy skills. So we're going to use this chart to talk about beginners. So I have a couple of student examples here, and this is the first video.
Go ahead.
Whoops.
Go ahead.
Okay, can you see that video?
No, I think it left us in PowerPoint when you...
Okay, let's see. Can you see it now?
So I can see your link to your Google Drive folder, but then it didn't follow you when you clicked on the link.
Okay, let's see what I need to do here. If I go back to...
You might have to unshare and then share the different screen.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So now I come back to here. Okay.
There we go.
You've got a video ready to go, and let's...
Yep.
Okay, and it's kind of quiet. Can you hear that sound? I stopped it temporarily, but can you hear the sound coming through?
A little bit. It's a little quiet, but could hear that there was sound.
Okay, great. So we're going to watch this example student video. I have 3 different videos that we'll watch. Each one is just about 2 minutes long. And each video shows a sample of the student speaking and then also their literacy skills. So as we start to watch this video, think about what observations do you have about this student's speaking ability?
I am from Congo. I live in United States, April 2016. First, I am work humanitarian center 6 months. I am short course. I'm very fast. I'm learning English class.
Okay,
I'm
very good.
very
Very good.
yeah.
So I have a question. In Africa, did you go to school?
No,
In Africa, no, you did not go to school.
no.
No. In Utah, did you go to school?
Yes.
What school?
School English class here humanitarian.
At the
center.
Humanitarian Center. For how long?
July.
July. So
Yes.
maybe 8 months now.
Yes.
8 months.
8 months.
Okay, very good. When you came to the Humanitarian Center, could you speak a little English or no English?
Okay, so
Very little.
Very little.
Okay, but now you speak okay?
Yes.
Yeah, good. What about reading? Can you? Okay, so would somebody volunteer to make an observation about his speaking ability?
Although it wasn't correct grammar, but he was understandable.
Yeah. Yep, and he was understanding the questions that were being asked. They were simple questions, but he did seem to really understand what was being asked and had appropriate answers. Yeah, thank you for that. So now we're going to watch his literacy skills. And I also, after we watch this, would like at least one person to make a quick observation about his literacy skills. So here we go. Read.
So, Jen,
If I show
yeah.
you this.
I can hear the audio, but I'm not seeing the video. Is that true for everyone?
Yes.
Yeah, we just see a white screen, but it's okay if we just hear.
Okay.
Yeah, we could hear the dialogue, but we just weren't getting the video feed.
How about that? Does that change anything?
Yes, now we can see.
Okay, so we'll just see it like this. Uh-oh.
Go ahead.
I just closed it. So,
Show you this paper.
okay.
Let's close this for just 1 minute. If I show you this paper, can you read this right here?
S
Mm-hmm.
H mom ma
Good.
T D R C
Good. And what about here?
man
Okay.
bad bad bad
Okay. Good.
ma 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 ba ba jump
That's more difficult. Okay. Try one more.
rat
Good. Okay. And one more.
hat
All right. Can you read this, or is that difficult?
R E W R
So that's more difficult.
Work.
Yeah. Yeah.
work.
So this is good because you know all of the ABCs
Mhm.
and you can stand out some words. So you've learned a lot while you've been here, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, great. Could somebody take a minute to share an observation about the literacy skills we saw right here?
He's beginning to make sense of letters and trying, knowing he needs to sound them out and to be able to put them together in a way. He's not reached fluency at that, but he knows kind of what he needs to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else, a quick observation?
In the chat, Marcia asks, does he know how to read in his native language?
No. So earlier in that video clip, I asked Jonathan, the student here, I asked him if he had been to school, and he says, nope, no school. So he's not had formal education in his own language and does not read in his own language. Mm-hmm. Good question. Okay. So that is the first video clip. We're going to watch one more. Two more, actually. The next one is here. And it looks like I might have to go share this again. So, sharing again. Oops. Here you're probably seeing all of these. Let's try to get, no, that's not it either.
Go.
Technical difficulties. Okay, I'm sharing one more time. So my guess is that what you're seeing is all of the small icons of the videos, but then when I open, you don't see the one that I've opened.
Correct.
Okay, well, we're going to watch it in.
Good afternoon, everybody.
If you watch it like that, is it in teeny tiny format?
It's teeny tiny, but we can hear.
Okay, let's go
My
ahead.
name is Abdirsaq Shire. I am from Somalia. I have lived in the US 1 year and 4 months. I work military center. I work in cafeteria, cook food. I work fast. I'm friendly. I own time.
Good.
I want a job, please. I want a job for lift up driver. Thank you very much, everybody. My boss, I like the cows. I help every day. I help job every day.
Nice.
That's why my boss, thank you very much. Very, very, very good.
So you've been here for 1 year.
1 year and 4 months.
Yeah. Well, I mean, working at the humanitarian center.
Humanitarian center and 6 months.
And you started looking for.
Okay. Unfortunately, I can't pause the video easily like I could in the others when it's in this format, but can anybody point out a couple of maybe vocabulary words or phrases that he used that indicates that he's at a little bit higher speaking level, a little bit of a higher beginner? Let's listen to a little bit more and see if you can pick out some vocabulary or phrases that are a little bit more complex or advanced that show that he's more of a high beginner.
Good afternoon, everybody.
I don't want to start from the beginning here. So,
good afternoon. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, I mean, working at the humanitarian center.
Humanitarian center and 6 months.
And you started looking for a job.
For a job.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking for a job.
So I have a question. In Somalia, did you go to school?
Yes.
How many years of school did you have?
3 years of school.
3 years of school.
3 years
okay. And did you go to school in America?
In America, yes.
What school?
And 2 school, military center. Before I come in Utah, and 2 months class school, and Granite
at Granite Peaks. Okay, so you went to Granite Peaks for 2 months.
2 months.
And then you came to the humanitarian
and
center.
After military center,
Good.
6 months and 50 days.
Okay, did you speak a little English when you came here?
Yes, I understand English.
Yeah, but I mean, when you first came to the humanitarian center,
no,
you spoke very little English. Yeah. And now you speak more?
And now we speak more.
Good. What about reading? Can you read more now?
Yeah.
For example, can you read here?
S-H-M.
Okay, so I'm going to pause there. Did that second part didn't have as many examples, but does anybody remember something that he said that was a little bit more complex that shows he is a higher beginner? So one thing that stood out to me is earlier in the video, he said, "That's why," and then gave his reason. So I think a phrase like "that's why" shows he's a little bit of a higher beginner. Jonathan, the first student, was giving usually 1-word answers, very short answers. The second student is giving longer answers. So he's a higher beginner in speaking. So listen now to his literacy skills. I realize you can only listen, but I think you'll get the sense of it by listening just fine. Here we go.
T-D-R-C.
Can you read this line?
Mont. And back. Manuk. Read. Hot.
And the next one?
And he is working. He has a work. Time job.
Good. Okay, next job.
Okay, so any observations on his literacy skills from what you could hear there?
I just typed it in, but I said that he reads at a quicker pace and with more confidence.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, his fluency is higher. He's definitely more confident. You couldn't see what he was pointing to, but he still was making some mistakes. When the word gum was on the paper, he said mug. He got the letters mixed up. The sentence, "it is a full-time job," he instead of job, he said work. So he recognized the word, but he said a similar word that wasn't what was written on the paper. Thanks. And by the way, when I'm sharing my screen, I can't see the chat. So Danielle, could you maybe let me know when people write something in the chat? Or if you guys just want to speak up and unmute to share your thoughts, that'd be great too.
Jen, I'm wondering if you unshare, then open the video that you want to show and then share if it will show up rather than trying to open it from this screen, you'll probably be able to share and have more, you know, be able to pause it and stuff.
Yeah, you know, that worked on the first video, but this second time it didn't. So let me try one more time. We've got one more video.
Really quick, you mentioned gum and mug. Would that be because Somali is read left to right? I mean, right to left instead of left to right?
Actually, Somalian is read left to right the same way that English is, but
Okay.
that could be something that we'd want to consider if it was a language like Arabic. But yeah, that's a really good point. Let's see, I've got this last video up. And now I'm going to come try to share. Thank you, everybody, for being patient here. And still, it's not showing me the video as an option. Go. Maybe if I make it larger. Believe it or not, Danielle and I practiced all of this a couple days ago, but practice did not make perfect in this case. Whoops. All right, we're gonna have to watch it smaller again, one more time. All right, this is our last video in the presentation though, so go, we'll be good. Go ahead. Oops, okay, so before we start this, the question for you to think about as you listen to her speak are, what are the vocabulary words or the grammar structures that she uses that show that she's a high beginner?
Miss Noella, I'm from Congo. I come in USA 1 year, 8 months. I am working in the humanitarian center and student. She work good, she happy.
Good. What is your job at the humanitarian center?
Custodian.
Custodian.
Yeah.
Excellent. Good.
Yeah.
So you are from Congo.
Yes, I have a family.
Did you go to school in Africa?
Yes.
How many years of school?
I finished primary, secondary, English.
So you finished primary, which is 6 years.
Yeah, 6 years.
And then how many? 3 years of secondary.
Second. Okay. Yeah, second.
So altogether you had 9 years.
Yeah, 9
school.
years.
9 years of school.
Yeah.
Okay. And did you go to school in Utah?
No. This is
here at the humanitarian center. Yeah. Yeah. Did the program here help you?
Yeah, I helped so much.
So much?
Yeah, so much.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, can you read an example for me? Okay, does anybody have an observation on her speaking? So I know that you couldn't see her, but she is clearly very confident when she speaks. She's not using perfect English, but she has a lot of confidence when she speaks. She mixes up some pronouns still, but she's definitely able to communicate meaning in her speaking. She's speaking in longer responses. Any other observations before I move on to the literacy part here?
I thought it felt more conversational, and maybe that was, you know, just the confidence coming through.
Yeah, thank you. Yep. Like, can you read here, for example?
He is working. He has a full-time job.
Good. And can you read the next one?
The supervisor asking him to start. Tomorrow, it will be a difficult job, but then salary is good.
All right, so your reading is really good. Do you want to do one more?
Every application is required to get a background check. It is also the requirement to pass and drug tests. What are you to requirements for this job?
Nice. Okay, I'll stop there. So what observations do you have about her literacy ability there? What's one observation that somebody can share about her literacy ability?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I was just going to point out that she seemed to be a little slow at reading, just stumbling over the words, but when she was able to, I guess, like fully comprehend the word, it seemed to come out. Like it seemed like she was understanding those words.
Right. Yeah. So I had her start at a sentence level rather than at the letter or word level, and she could do that easy sentence really easily. And then when it got to the more intermediate paragraph, she did stumble on some longer words. Yeah, thank you for sharing that observation. Okay, so as far as knowing our learners, I do think with beginners, it's really important to screen for literacy. And you may work in a program where you rarely see students who don't have formal education in their background, but when you do, even if it's only occasionally, know that there are some good tools for evaluating that and looking into that. So this is a really quick literacy screener that you'll have access to if you end up wanting to use something like this with your own students. It starts at the letter level, goes to the simple word level, simple sentences, and then a little bit higher. And you can learn a lot about a student's literacy ability, even in their native language, by having them read through these samples. Let's see. Okay, so let's go to, oops, before we get there, here. If I have, oh, is that not gonna let me draw? Oh, goodness. All right, well, I was hoping to be able to draw some lines on the top of this slide, but since I can't, let's just move on here. So those 3 video samples that we watched, all of those students had been in the United States a similar amount of time, and they had been in our program about the same amount of time. They're all equally bright and motivated. They're all roughly the same age, but the key difference in their literacy ability is, of course, the education level in their native country. So that's a key question to maybe talk to students when you're doing intake. How much education did you have in your home country, or did you go to school in your home country? That can give you an idea if you need to do that literacy screener. So the takeaway from these videos is just be aware of students' literacy background. Okay, so that segment was kind of tricky there because of technical difficulties, but let's move on here. So I do want to talk about mixed ability grouping and how, especially at the beginning level, we see this a lot. So this group of students that you see right here, it's a fairly small group, but it represents some students who are your typical high beginner in speaking and literacy, who have professional jobs in their home countries and a college education. And then there's also students who were in our literacy program for long enough that their literacy skills have progressed to the point where they could get to that high beginning class, but they've still got shaky literacy. So it's a very mixed group. And that's always the challenge as a teacher. What are the tricks that we use to handle those mixed groups? So this is where I would like to stop sharing and have you guys, I'm going to open up the chat here. There we go. Great. Yeah, thank you for making your comments in the chat here. So if everybody would open the chat, and the question is, I'm writing this in the chat right now. What tips and tricks do you use to manage mixed ability groups? Okay, and if you want to write something in the chat, that would be great. Or if you just want to unmute and share a comment here. We had quite a few people in our group say that they've got lots of experience teaching English learners, and I know this is a challenge that we all deal with. So I'd love to hear input from all of you. So we'll give this a few minutes to have some messages come through on the chat, and then also if somebody would like to say something by audio, that would be fine too. Then after we have a minute to group share, I've got a thought to share on it as well. I see people busily typing. We have a new teacher looking for tips and tricks. Okay, Chloe says small groups, grouping similar abilities together, and sometimes grouping lower level with higher level. Yeah, so that's a great point, that you can be strategic in how you put your groups together.
I can't type in the chat box for some reason. This is Katie with the ESLC. I just would add to that grouping high level with low level, but also low level with low level, high level with high level, and then providing differentiated materials that target the same content area. I think we forget about the different types of groupings, that it doesn't have to just be low and high so that they can support each other, but that we can group the other way too.
Yeah, thank you. And also grouping similar language backgrounds sometimes, and then different language backgrounds sometimes. There are lots of ways that we can be strategic in our grouping. Thanks for sharing that, Katie. Kelsey asked, does anyone use videos to monitor student progress? It could be a good tool to demonstrate to a student how much they've progressed over time. I think that's a fantastic idea. One thing that I've done when teaching a computer literacy class is to have students make a little mini portfolio in their Google Drive, and that's something you could definitely use together with a digital portfolio. That's the word I'm looking for. Digital portfolios. You could have students upload their own little video clips of them reading or speaking, and then they could go back over time, and if it's in their Google Drive, they'll always be able to see it and their progress. I think it's a great suggestion. Okay. Let's keep going here. Mixed ability groups. So what I would add is, there we go. Okay. What I would add about mixed ability groups is the benefit of routines. So I've listed out a sample routine that I've often used when teaching beginners, where we take 10 minutes to do intro activities such as taking roll, making announcements, talking about the date and the calendar. And then 20 minutes of a just separate phonics skill building activity, then moving into speaking and listening about a topic, and then doing group reading surrounding the same topic, some review that includes writing and copying notes, and then a segment at the end where individuals or pairs reread the text that we've been working on. And in the classroom situation I had at that time, we had a very small classroom, but we had a larger area next door. So I would have the students stand up, go over to that larger area, find a partner to sit next to, and then the pair would read together. And I loved having that option to have students stand up, move to another room, find a partner, and work together with that partner. The other thing I loved about this routine is it gave me a at least 15-minute block every day where I was not on stage, and the students knew the routine. They knew that during that time it was time for them to work with a partner. And that was my golden moment to work with the mixed ability groups. So I would also keep a notebook next to me as I was teaching. And if I noticed a student needed some individual attention on a certain thing, I'd jot down a note. And then during that 15-minute time, I make sure to catch that student to work on that. So I think routines are great for beginners for several reasons. It can help you get that targeted time to work with an individual student, but also it makes students feel more comfortable in class more quickly, especially if you have students who don't have formal education backgrounds. Coming to school is kind of a scary thing. And if you're at that lowest 0 level English, it's also scary because you don't really know what's going on. But if they can understand and start to get the rhythm of the class routines, I've seen students start to feel comfortable in class really quickly just because they understand what's going to come first, what kind of thing is going to come next, and they can always expect a similar progression of activities through the day. Okay, so moving on to our second topic, using relevant content. So I have a couple of concepts that we're going to talk about. I also am hoping that we'll get some interaction here. So first one is task-based instruction. And I've got this article here that after the presentation, I'll be sharing this slideshow, so you'll be able to get to all of this, but I'll open the article here. Then I'm going to copy and paste it and put it into the chat here. So I'd like you to, I'm going to put the article into the chat. I'd like you to open it and then quickly scan and tell me, by unmuting, tell me what are the features of task-based instruction. So here, I stop sharing. Here we are in the chat. So if you could open this article, everybody go to the chat, open that article, and tell me what are the features of task-based instruction. Okay, and there are 3 features of task-based instruction that I saw just in that very first paragraph. Can somebody tell me 1 or 2 of those? So we're looking to find the features of task-based instruction.
So one thing I'm noticing is authentic language.
Okay, yeah. Yep, and I've got Jamie in the chat here says authentic language and also meaningful tasks. Exactly. And one more feature of task-based instruction. One thing maybe I'll add is that the assessment is the ability to complete the task. Yeah, outcomes. Thank you, Chloe. Yeah, so we've got authentic language, meaningful tasks, and the outcomes with the outcome being able to complete the task. So I'm going to show you a sample set of task-based activities that the teachers and I at the Humanitarian Center brainstormed last year. I'll make this a little bigger, previewing it. Okay, so we got together as a group of teachers about this time last year to brainstorm some activities that would be specifically task-based and with the topic of cold weather, holidays, and schedule changes. So some of the ideas that teachers came up with are the task of looking up school calendars online, or looking up store hours, or looking up the bus schedule and how those schedules might be different with the holidays. Another area we came up with was looking up the weather forecast, understanding the weather forecast, and then also discussing where to buy cold weather clothing items. For some of our students, this is their first winter. They don't necessarily have boots, gloves, good coats. Where are the places you can go shopping for those items? How can you practice asking for those items? Comparative shopping, where's an inexpensive place to buy something? Where's a more expensive place to buy something? Another topic we came up with was what to do if your heater is broken at home, talking to a landlord, asking about how to fix it, how long it's going to take to fix, how you can problem solve in the meantime. And then another important task is paying your utility bills. And then the fourth area we came up with was driving in the snow. First of all, do you understand how to buy and sell a used car? Practice dialogues surrounding that. Understanding how to drive in the snow safely. Checking the weather again. Being prepared for winter weather when driving. Talking about tires, where to go to buy tires. And then finally looking up a bus route, and if the weather is bad and you choose not to drive, what are some alternatives? So this was after, a good brainstorming session of about 10 people in a room, coming up with some tasks. We also put together a list of less ideas for either speaking, reading, vocabulary, grammar, writing, technology. So we thought about it in those different ways too. So I thought that this actually ended up being a really great staff meeting for us. We made this the topic of one of our staff meetings. How can we make sure action is more task-based? And let's see, I think instead of having us do a group brainstorm, I'm just going to move on here, but I would definitely recommend that can be a great topic for a staff meeting and a great activity for a staff to think together, brainstorm together of how to make your instruction more task-based, which is a way to make your learning more personal. And the second idea I've got here for us to look at is language experience approach. So it's also LEA, talked about by its initials, LEA. Here's an article about language experience approach. I'm going to copy this and put it in the chat. And I want you to tell me in the chat or by unmuting, whoops, what are the features? Here we go. Stop sharing. Okay, in the chat, here is the article. So if you look in the chat and open that link about language experience approach, you can see in that first paragraph a description of what language experience approach is. I came up with about 4 features that summarize what LEA is. Whoops. There you go. Sorry, that link didn't come through right away. So you should see the link right now. Open up that link to the article about language experience approach and either type in the chat or unmute to tell me a couple of the features of LEA. Okay, Chloe, thanks. The one feature of LEA is that the teacher transcribes a student's own words. Okay. Does anybody else see anything in that paragraph about LEA that is a feature that summarizes what LEA is? It's based on students' own experiences. Communication skills are integrated. Thank you. Okay, great. So yeah, LEA, based on personal experience, focuses on oral language first, and then the teacher is transcribing what the students say to make a text, which then becomes the basis for other reading and writing activities. So here is a sample of a very low literacy class LEA activity that we did last year in, I think, January. Kind of loading up slowly here. Okay, here we go. So the students had the opportunity to go visit the Capitol building. We did a lot of pre-work leading up to the field trip, talking about what happens in the Capitol building. Goodness, this photo's loading very slowly. There we go. And then after the field trip, the following day, we had a review lesson where we used the LEA technique to make a text for the students to practice reading. So first we looked at this photo. Students were excited to show all the photos that they had taken themselves. We had a long photo sharing session and then discussion of what we'd seen. And then after all of that, I used some guiding questions to help the students come up with descriptions of the Capitol building in their own words. And since this is a very low literacy class, I used a STEM, a pattern, and just asked them to describe the Capitol building. And to give them some examples, I'd even let them choose between a few words. So like, is this building big or small? And of course, everybody with a lot of enthusiasm says big, very big, right? And then I was able to encourage elicit other words to finish that stem. So the Capitol building is big, beautiful, white, downtown, very nice. And this is a very simple set of text, but for this low beginner, low literacy class, it was just the right reading ability. So this then became our reading practice text and also the basis for a writing activity where the students could then write something on their own. So here they had enough of a pattern that once they got the hang of the pattern, they could take their own paper and write some things on their own. And it probably started with the Capitol building is good. And then if they wanted to write something else, they could try writing it on their own, or they could ask me as the teacher for, assistance in writing some other words. So that is a sample of a language experience approach where you use the personal experiences of students and their own oral language to write down a text that then becomes the basis for reading and writing activities. I think LEA is a wonderful way to make content relevant and to make learning personal and to get students really involved in the activities and in the learning. So we're going to take a minute to write our own example. Whoops, let's skip down here. Once again, thank you everyone for being patient with the technical issues. Looks like it's just loading slowly. So I'm going to skip down to the slide we just left off of. Okay, this view allows me to write in here. All right, so COVID testing is something that all of us at least are hearing about, if not have experienced ourselves. So one thing you could do with a class right now is show a photo like this, start getting students talking about what they know or what they've experienced or what they know their friends or family have experienced, and then have them tell you about those experiences while you write down their words to make a text that will then become the basis for reading and writing practice. And then you as a teacher should always be prepared with some guiding questions. So my guiding questions for a beginning class would start with, what are they doing in the photo? And if you guys could unmute and participate here, that would be great. What are they doing in the photo? What do you see happening in the photo?
A man is talking to somebody in a car.
Yeah, and why do you think he's talking to them in the car? Are they, whoops. So maybe we could
They're doing a COVID test.
say that again.
They're doing a COVID test.
Okay, so I'll just copy that down. They are doing a COVID test. And then maybe my guiding question could be, where can you go to get a test? And for my students, the closest place is the Redwood Clinic. So if we had already talked about that, the students would probably respond something like, go to the Redwood Clinic, or the Redwood Clinic has COVID tests. Another guiding question would be, why should you get a test? Maybe the students would say, a COVID test is important. Why should you get a test? Because oops. So I'm writing a few sentences here because I want to show you the readability analyzer in a second here. COVID test is important because it helps that's probably not the way a student would say it, but I would try to keep to the language that the students are using as much as possible. And we could say something like, COVID test is free, and if you need information, call, and I don't have the number right here, but we'll make up a number. Okay, so we could spend a few minutes as a class coming up with a text. And depending on your students, if you don't have any students who have low literacy skills, then you may not need to worry about this part as much. But if you do feel like you need to be considering the readability level, this readability analyzer is a useful tool. So I'm going to copy this. You can open the readability analyzer. There's a few different analyzers online. Most of them are similar to this, where you can paste in a text. and then submit the text, and it'll analyze it and come back with some results about a level. So this shows the ATOS level of 3.4, a word count, average word length, average sentence length, average vocabulary level. And you can use a tool like this to figure out how complex your students are in making these texts. You can also use it as a tool for you yourself to fiddle with a text or understand how to make a text more simple. So for example, if we were to do a similar activity with very low level students, we'd want to think about making the text shorter, using patterns, and perhaps supplying a stem or a sentence starter. So an alternate story could be something like, COVID testing is important, COVID testing is at Redwood Clinic, COVID testing is free, call 555-3214 for an appointment, and that would be the end of the story. It would be shorter, it would use patterns using that sentence stem. Okay, let's go on to this next concept. So, whoops, here we also have an article about Tavi Talo TASP. So I am going to copy this article into the chat, and I want you to scan the article and tell me, what does Tavi Talo TASP stand for? So here I need to stop sharing, go to the chat. Okay, so open up that article and scan the article to find out what Tavi Talo TASP stands for. Okay, if you found it in the article, you can either write it in the chat box or unmute yourself. Let's start with, oops, there we go. Okay, so starting with Talo. Talo stands for text as a linguistic object. What about Tavi? Text as a vehicle for information, and TASP. And we've got all three of them there. Great. Okay, so this is an idea that's been around in linguistics for a long time, but when I did a little more research on it, I realized it had been around for a long time, but I just learned about it from Jessica Hercules at the English Skills Learning Center when she did a presentation on it for our staff probably about a year ago, maybe 2 years even then. And it has been a helpful way for me to think about how I use texts in the classroom. So I'm going to go back to the regular view here. Shoot, that got me all the way back to the beginning. Okay, here we are with Tavi Talo TASP. So Tavi is text as a vehicle for information, Talo text as a language object, and TASP is text as a springboard for production. And each of these is a different way to think about using a text. So for example, this is for beginners, an example of a text that was created off of a photo about a family moving to a new house. And that'll come up in just a minute here. Okay, so we used this photo as a basis for our discussion. We talked about what this family is doing, the reason they might have had to move, and then this is a text about that photo. They're moving to a new house, their apartment is too small, it has 2 bedrooms, they have 5 children, the place is too small for 7 people, the new house has 4 bedrooms, they'll have more room, they need a truck to move everything, they need boxes, they need help, they'll be very tired after moving everything. So this is a text that one way we can use that text, and probably the most traditional way we use that text, is as a vehicle for information. So we're talking, we're telling a story, we can ask comprehension questions, we're using that text to tell a story and to share information. But after using the text in that traditional way, you can use the same text again in the second way, the talo, text as a linguistic object. So we can take this text and use it to teach linguistic principles. So in our class where we were, so these are comprehension questions, but in our class where we were really focusing on literacy, I pulled out all of the basic sight words and we did drill activities with the sight words, or flashcard activities, or games with the different sight words that are from this exact text. And also we talked about different word families and did some activities with word families using these story words and how do they fit into these families. So the word house, it fits into this OU family. The word place, it fits into this long A family. The word room, it fits into this OO family. And then we also talked about syllables, taking a longer word and segmenting it into smaller parts, and you know, doing some syllable activities. So all of these words are from this text. So we're using the text as a linguistic object rather than just a vehicle for information. Also word patterns, talking about prefixes, suffixes, root words that might be the same, just syllables that might be the same, and made an activity there. And then finally, reading with fluency in the paragraph format. Before moving on to that third type of, the third way of looking at a text, which is the text as a springboard for production. So after the students have done those first two, after we've looked at the text in those first two ways, which are a vehicle of information and then a linguistic object, we're thinking about this as a springboard for production. So production meaning the students are going to make something themselves. They're going to create new language out of this springboard. So that would be a speaking activity, or in this case, we made a writing activity. So they had space and time to write their own creative sentences or story about a moving experience. A lot of the words that they might need to write their story, they can refer back to here to find the word, to write it down here. So that's using the text as a springboard for production. Okay, let me come back here. So discussing Tavi Talo task ideas for our COVID text. So let's go back here. Okay, so this is a very, very short text. We don't have a lot to work with here, but what is one way that you could use this text as a linguistic object? So is there a grammar pattern there, or is there a pronunciation concept there, or is there a phonics concept there? What's one idea for using that text as a linguistic object that you could make a mini lesson and tie it back to that text? Yeah, so I can't see the chat if anybody's writing in the chat, but if at least one person wants to make a contribution there, what is one way that you could make this, use this text as a linguistic object? So one thing I can think of is this sentence right here. If you need information, comma, call this telephone number. So you could talk about the pattern of if sentences. You could write out several other sentences that start with if. You could do pronunciation with this TION ending. You could do a mini lesson on what else?
It's not letting me write in the chat, and I don't know why. This is Katie again. The copular verb is in this one. It shows up twice, so that's one that you could talk about rather than it being tense. It's more of an equals.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. That's a really good one. Okay, and like I said, there's not a lot of text here to work with, but if you had some kind of text that you were working with that was longer, you'd probably have plenty of either grammar or pronunciation or phonics things that you could pull out to do little mini lessons on connected to that task. And then, of course, Springboard for production. What is a speaking or writing activity? Those are the two methods of production, right? Speaking or writing. What is a speaking or writing activity that the students could do based off of this text? They could practice calling. They could, do practice calls to that telephone number. Like what would you say on a telephone call? They could do a little mini presentation to the class, speaking about their own personal experience, that kind of thing. So that would be TASP, the text as a springboard to production. Okay. All right, last concept here, productive struggle. Here is an article about productive struggle, which is, I think, something talked about in the K-12 education world a lot, and also something that we can learn from and apply here in adult ed. So I'm just moving over to the chat to share this article. Okay, so if you can come to the chat and open the article, scan through that article and tell me a definition of productive struggle. What is productive struggle? Great, so you should be looking through that article, looking for a definition of productive struggle. And once you've got it, if you want to say it out loud by unmuting or write it in the chat. Okay, so productive struggle is academic rigor. It's the struggle between scaffolding and support. I like that they use the term sweet spot. It's the sweet spot between scaffolding and support.
Yeah, just starting to be challenging, but not so challenging that it makes you want to give up.
Right. Yeah, and I think this is important for all levels, and especially with beginning learners. How does this idea apply to teaching beginning English learners? Yeah, so if you guys would share, how do you think this applies to teaching beginning English learners, productive struggle?
It seems like the I+1 concept that I think with beginning learners, there's a tendency to make the assumption that they can't do a lot of things rather than looking at what they can do. And so I think embracing the struggle, so to say, and having a little faith in your students, it can be surprising of what they're actually capable of doing. But again, the sweet spot of finding where it's not so overwhelming, but still challenges them and pushes them to see, I guess, their own progress as well. But I think teachers have the tendency, especially with beginners, to focus on the can'ts rather than the cans.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. That's a really important point, to focus on what students are able to do.
I think one thing that's really important about it is that it really needs to be very targeted, you know, because language can be very overwhelming for especially beginners. In general, it can be overwhelming for all of us, but especially beginners. And so really having it be very targeted, very specific, so that it doesn't get overwhelming, so that it is surmountable.
Great, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I also think about this when I'm choosing materials, and considering how much scaffolding is going to be necessary. So ideally, I'd like to choose materials that I can give a little bit of scaffolding and then leave the students to struggle on their own to be able to access the text. But if it's a low beginning class or a low literacy class, you've got to be really careful to choose those materials that will not be overwhelming, but lead to that productive struggle with the with it in reach to be successful. Katie talked about that idea of I+1 being I being what the student already knows. This is a very simple definition, but I is what the student already knows, the input, and then +1 is just one step above that. So using materials that are just one step above where the student currently is, rather than 3 or 5 or 10 steps above. Okay, let's move on to our last topic here about tracking progress. Couple of quick things to share and then we'll wrap up. This is our shortest section of the presentation. So first, talking about the CASAS and BEST test, which is something I think we all do, but then also sharing a couple of other ways to track progress. So first, with the CASAS and BEST test, how do you guys share and celebrate results with students? I'll show you a couple of things that I've got here, and then if anybody wants to chime in with other ways of celebrating results with students, sharing with students, and celebrating with students. So one idea is to take this chart from CASAS, and I have just printed this out for students, and then I'll also print out or show them the Utopia screen that shows a history of their testing. And I'll take a pen and just mark in, like we'll use this chart to mark down their past couple of speaking listening tests and also their past couple of reading tests to show them how they're making progress along this chart. And then also show them these levels. It also helps students understand that when they make a jump over that bar, that's when they earn the certificate. But even if they haven't jumped over that bar yet, maybe they've made progress within the level. So that is one way to share and explain results to students. Then if you aren't aware of Canva, I think it's a really great tool for teachers to know about. Canva.com, looks like I'm logged in here, but you need to sign up for an account, which is free. And then once you're logged in, there's all of these different things you can design. And if you come down here to certificate, I think this is a great way to make easy free certificates for students. So there's a whole bunch of templates. And when this loads, you can see all of the different options. So you can either make, there we go. So you can either make a generic certificate where you could just make, you know, a line like this where you would print this out 20 times and write the name in by hand, or if you want to print out the student's first name and last name and print it out, this is a great way to get certificates. So that is a useful tool. What about others? What are some ways that you share and celebrate results of CASAS or BEST testing with your students? And also maybe a question to ask yourself, or as a program, do we share results? Or do students just come take tests and we put it into Utopia and that's kind of the end? Like, how do we complete that feedback loop to students so they know what their results are?
Before COVID, we would have a massive party.
Yes.
We would have a food day and everyone would bring food from their country or whatever, and we would celebrate those that were advancing, and that helped everybody else. When they're exiting ESL, I bring my caps and gowns from the university and they get to put them on and hold up their certificate so that everyone knows that they are exiting ESL, and then that pushes everyone else to want to be able to participate in that later on.
Yeah, wonderful. So making a big deal and celebrating, that's great. Thank you for sharing. Okay, since we're running out of time, I'll just quickly show these other ways of assessing. So the CASAS and BEST tests are designed to test speaking and listening ability, or I guess mostly listening ability, but then also reading comprehension. They are not great at testing literacy skills. So if that is something that your program wants to track progress in, these are a couple of ideas for tracking literacy. So the group of teachers and I at the Humanitarian Center, we were using this competency assessment for a while. And this was this is an assessment that we created as a group and by the request of DWS, that is our funder. So we came up with some questions, we came up with a point system, and then we took those total points and broke the total points down into 5 bands. I guess it actually ends up being 6 bands. So 0 points would be that you're at a level 0 in that competency up through a level 5. So this was, and you know, this only works for our program, but it is a way that we can take a student at the beginning of our program and get some detailed look at each of these different topics based on some points, and then show that they might have made progress in those areas. This is, of course, something that could be edited or changed or altered to fit whatever context you're working on. We included some numeracy, talking about numbers. We included some basic literacy here. And each one of these competencies, a student could demonstrate a rating level of 0 to 5. And then a couple months later, we could give the same assessment again to show progress. I know the teachers really valued this assessment because it gave them a chance to really see one-on-one what their students were able to do. And then a second thing that comes from the world of K-12 is these reading. So this is a sample from K-12. If you look at what a reading specialist in an elementary school might be doing, they would perhaps use a tool like this. Whoops, I guess it's coming up this way. So a reading specialist or a reading coach in an elementary school might use a reading passage like this with some timed word counts. And then as the student read, they'd make notes about errors, what kind of errors, the accuracy rate, the reading rate, words per minute. And then over time, compare those numbers to see progress. And I've shared a couple of fluency passages that are more appropriate for adult education. if reading fluency is something that you're working on with students, these are some things you could use to assess reading fluency and then track it. So this folder that you could access later has several examples that are topics more appropriate to adult learners. Okay, so those are some ideas for tracking progress. Whoops, it looks like we skipped a couple here. All right, so we've got just 5 minutes left. What personal takeaways, if we could have a minute to do a group share, what is a personal takeaway that anybody has? This is also a time that we could do questions and answers before we wrap up. So does anybody have comments on something from the presentation that may have sparked an idea that you might try out with your own class, or a takeaway of any other sort? Okay, I'm looking back here at the chat, and Danielle has used Canva. Thank you. Kelsey, you say that you're sharing results with students privately via text. That's wonderful. Progress video clips, good idea. Okay, thank you for sharing that, Kelsey. The idea of showing a picture and having students discuss it, that LEA, language experience approach, I think is a great way to make lessons personal.
One thing that I'd like to bring up is in the chat, someone asked where they can find worksheets like this. And I think that was when you were sharing like the moving picture and the text. And my understanding is that kind of beauty of this approach is that you're creating it with your students as you go. So you start with the picture, they're creating the text, and then from there you're creating more materials to work with that. So that, I don't know, you might have more to say on that as well.
Yeah, that is true. And so the language experience approach is where you do create the text together as a class and then make activities after that. I do create resources for teachers, and that one that I showed is part of a collection of resources that I've created that I'm happy to share. Probably the best way to get information about that is to send me an email separately. So I'll put this email address in there for you to email me. And also, let me take this minute to share the presentation so you can have that. So I'll put that into the chat. So here's a link to the presentation. You can save that. If there are any other questions, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, feel free to save that link to the presentation to get any of those links, or email me if you have other questions, and I will wrap up with that.
All right. Thanks, Jen. Well, we are kind of right at our time mark, so we'll probably just wrap up. One thing logistics-wise, I know some of you had trouble with doing the registration in Midas, and so we just shared the link. If you do need that the Midas points to show up on your transcript, just drop your name and email address in the chat box, and I'll make sure that I get you added when I go in to add the hours in Midas. So other than that, I appreciate everybody's time this morning. I think these presentations have been really great, and I appreciate our presenters so much. And I think it was Doris that said earlier that all of you have these stories. I know that there are so many great things happening across the state, and I think one of the challenges that we have is that we're not really great at telling our stories. So if you would love to share some of your best practices, we would love to hear them. And so feel free to contact me, and we can set up a time when you can present and share some of your best practices with the rest of the state. So thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Danielle.